Let's go ahead and start. Shabbat Shalom, guys. We're going to look at this real quick. This is, we're going to start a series, all right? This series is titled Seasons for a Reason. If you take a college class, a high school class for that matter, if you take any classes, you will notice that some classes require a prerequisite for the class. That way you'll know what's going on in the class. This study today will be a prerequisite for the series that we're starting. So that way people can reference back to this to get an understanding of what's going on in context. Sometimes we just assume that everyone understands certain things according to Scripture. We just assume that in reading. But when we get everybody together, we realize that some people might not understand some of the prerequisites that we have of understanding in context. And sometimes they don't know what to ask. They don't know what to ask. So hopefully this is going to help answer some of the questions. Some of we would consider basic questions, but some people might just not know some of these answers or in context. We just assume that. So hopefully this is going to help out. And if you do have any questions, hit me up afterwards. We'll try to sort through some of these questions we have, but this should be a good basics to getting into for what we call the high holy days or the seasons. And they're seasons for a reason. You always heard the reason for the seasons. Well, these are seasons for a specific reason. So this is our intro. So we'll go ahead and get with this. A quote, "The only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen all at once." I thought that was a pretty decent little quote. I thought, hey, let's throw that up there. The origin of this quote is debated, but not sure who first quoted it, but it traced back to 1921, a science fiction work by Ray Cummings. I thought that was a pretty good little quote, so it just made me think. You know, it's a pretty deep quote. Let's go ahead and look at some scripture. We have Bereshit, which is Genesis, and we're looking at the very first chapter. So we're looking at the very beginning of our Bible, and it says, "God said, 'Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to divide the day from the night. Let them be signs of seasons, days, and years.'" So God provided a way for us to keep track of time. Okay? Put this up here. Y'all can go for that. You are about to enter another dimension, a dimension not of only sight and sound, but of mind, a journey into a wondrous land of calendarization. The next stop, Habayim zone, which basically just says Habayim is the time frame between sundown and complete darkness. We call that twilight. So this is the twilight zone, and there is a pun. There is a pun intended. It's going to be okay. It's a pun intended. All right, so what if I told you that your current calendar is different from the calendar used in the Bible? And that there are two types of calendars. So people might not notice that, might not understand that. They just thought that maybe, Jesus was like, hey, it's December 25th, it's my birthday. They just assume these things. And that's what would get taught with these things. And it's like there was no December, there was no 25th of these. There were two different calendars. So we're going to go into explaining a little bit of that. So comparing these two calendars is like comparing apples to oranges. That's a pretty good little quote. I know I like apples and oranges. Yeah. So these are two different types of calendars. Okay. I'm going to share a story with you. I'm glad Chase is here. He's going to love this story. This is one of his favorite stories. We get together. This story always comes up. He already knows where I'm going at with this one. Maybe. Talking about being in sync with things. These two calendars are totally not in the sync with each other. If you know me, I like to do hiking and backpacking. It's getting tougher as I'm getting older, but I enjoy backpacking and hiking. I do this. We were going out one day and it was snowing. It was snow on the ground. We said, hey, that's a young man's mindset. I'm going to check out my camping gear. I'm going to check out my backpacking gear. I want to see how it's going to do in the snow. All right. So we get out and it's cold. There's snow on the ground. And just to fast forward, just to give you a mindset, it snowed that night. It was cold, and we went a few miles in this place called Walls of Jericho. All right, this is not on the other side of the globe, Walls of Jericho. This is what it's named here in North Alabama, and it's very steep going down, very steep coming back out. It was snow on the ground going in, thundering and lightning and rainstorms on the way out. So we checked out all of our gear, and to let you know, it all failed. But nonetheless, we were driving, and it was cold, snow. I had a jacket on, I had a hoodie, I had like a toboggan, little beanie on, and we're driving. We're just going down the road. And I was just sitting we're sitting in his truck, just driving. We're ready to get to that campsite. We're going. And I'm just like, whew, boy, it is hot. It is hot in this vehicle. I mean, it is just hot in this vehicle. I was like, man, I look over at Chase, and man, he turns it up a little bit more and turns the things blowing on him. I'm like, whew, this man just likes it hot, man. This is hot. And I was just going, I was like, and I got to where I was like, okay, this is tough to breathe. I got a jacket. I took out my jacket. I was literally sweating. I took my hoodie off, or my toboggan off, and sitting there. I was like, whew. I started breathing hard. I was like, whew, man, it is hot in here, dude. This dude is sweating it out. I was like, he might be sick or something. I don't know. I didn't want to say nothing. I'm just cruising. And he's just over there, and he's just got his jacket on. He's bundling up, and I was like, dude, I don't know what's going on, this dude. I was like, I finally couldn't take it anymore. I was like, man, dude, I don't know, man. I'm sweating, dude. What's going on? Like, why is it so hot in your vehicle? And he looked over and he was like, oh, dude, man, your side's got the heat blowing. I got air blowing on my side. I was like, what the? I was like, man. I was like, you mean I got my own controller for air on this side? I drive a 91 Nissan hardbody. Okay, I'm still trying to get the air working on that one. You know, we didn't have that luxury. And I was like, what? I got side, I can control my temperature? He's like, yeah. Jason's like, man, what are you doing? You like over there just sweating out. I was like, I'm hot, man. So we laughed about that the whole time. We were laughing. I endured the heat for so long till I could not endure it anymore. And I just found out that our two sides of the vehicle were not in sync. They were not in sync. I was pretty hot. So after I figured that out, I adjusted my temperature and I got comfortable. But his side of the vehicle and my side of the vehicle were not in sync. And I thought that would go very well with our story today of not being in sync when we're looking at these two calendars. So, we don't have vacations, we have adventures. That's what it is. It is an adventure, yeah. So we look at things, we have a Hebrew calendar, or the biblical calendar, and we have a Gregorian calendar. That's the two basic calendars that we actually have, that we're looking at. So we're going to look at these two calendars, but first, what if you try to imagine what it would look like looking at a calendar or a time that is off from you? We have time zones, so some people are operating in different time zones. But I want to give you an example of when even time zones are messed up. On August 15th, 2015, North Korea established their own time zone. They shifted its clocks back 30 minutes, a symbolic move to sever ties with Japanese imperialist history on the 70th anniversary of Korean liberation from Japanese rule. So imagine your time zone is 30 minutes off from everybody else. All right? Not an hour, that's easy math. 30 minutes. All right? So that's what he did. That's a bold move. That's a way of saying, you know what? Forget the world. I'm doing my own thing. 30 minutes off time zone. But luckily on April 29th, 2018, North Korea leader Kim Jong-un announced his country will be realigning its clocks with South Korea. On April 30th, 2018, the Supreme People's Assembly of North Korea issued a decree about changing the time zone in North Korea as a further step in unifying Korea and eliminating differences between the South and North. The time zone changed back on May 4th, 2018. All that happened, and a lot of people didn't even know about it. So you can see how 30 minutes can kind of shift off if you're trying to keep track of time. It's different and it seems odd, and you have to stop and you have to try to calculate things. And this is very similar to the Gregorian calendar and the Hebrew calendar. You have to stop and you have to actually take time to think this through. So we're going to look at some of the differences real quick. So the Hebrew calendar, the biblical calendar, is a lunar calendar, and it has 12 months. The months were renamed around the Babylonian era. So these months were first month, second month, third month. They would just name them by the number of the month. But during the Babylonian exile, that time frame, the names changed and they actually gave names to the months. So this would be what we're looking at. You have Tishrei, you have Nisan. So Nisan is actually the first month, which actually starts around April-ish on the Gregorian calendar. So we're looking at this Gregorian calendar is a solar calendar with 12 months of 28 to 31 days each, also known as the New Style calendar, proclaimed in 1582 by Pope Gregory VIII. All right, so you look and you say, well, the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we go by, is literally not that old. They actually called it the New Style calendar, 1582. So we're going through this. A lunar calendar versus a solar calendar. So we have a lunar calendar, solar calendar. That's the major differences that we're going to have. So you ask yourself, what is a lunar calendar? All right. A lunar calendar is a calendar based on monthly cycles of the moon's phases, known as the synodic months or lunations. Synodic months or lunations. What? That's probably what some of you are saying. What does that mean? Scott, can you give us a visual? Say no more, I got you. So this is moon phases. When we're looking at moons and the phases of the moon, all right? So let's just say you're looking in the sky and you see a moon that's shaped something like one of these on the screen. Look through this. Right here, where you see that crescent just starting, that little crescent, that is the first of the month. So that'd be the start of the month. That's the first of the month. I always throw that up there. People laugh. They go, I don't know who these guys are. It's all right. Don't worry about it. It's a meme for people who are around the 90s era of Bone Thugs and Harmony. You say, Scott, why would you put that up there? Because Scott likes to be silly sometimes. It's okay. So it's the first of the month. If you look up in the sky and you see a full moon, where it has no crescent, it's a full moon. That is the middle of the month. That is the middle of the month. And one thing that I want to point out on that middle of the month here, in Psalms 81, we just read that in our psalm reading for today. Sound the shofar at Rosh HaKodesh, that's the new moon. Sound at the new moon, and at the full moon for the pilgrim feast. At the pilgrim feast. So Sukkot, the festival of tabernacles, that's a pilgrim feast. It happens to be on a full moon. If you're celebrating Sukkot and it's not a full moon, it ain't Sukkot. Or Passover. We'll do a study on those two later on. But when you look up in the sky and you're celebrating your feast, I remember we were celebrating Sukkot many years ago, and we were over at my house, had some friends over, and I invited one of our friends out. And he came out, he goes, wow, he goes, y'all look, it's a full moon tonight. And we're like, it is. And it'll be like that next year too when we do this. But he was like, it's a beautiful moon. It's just really big. It's like, yep. Yeah, isn't that a coincidence? So that would be the middle of the month on a calendar. So you're calculating from it's a moon cycle if you see how it's fading out. And then when you see a blank, that's the end of the month. The moon's gone. It's the end of the month. Seems like a pretty simple calendar to just follow. You're just following the moon cycles. That's how it goes. So the new day, so now we know how the calendar and works with the days and the months, but now we're going to actually look at actual breaking it down into days. A new day begins at sunset, or when you can see 3 stars. That's kind of like the tradition that got brought up, is when you see 3 stars, hence the twilight zone. On a Gregorian calendar, the day begins at sunrise. So when the sun comes up, that's a new day. When the sun sets, on the biblical calendar, that's a new day. So when the sun sets. Well, look at this. Genesis chapter 1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was unformed and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. God said the light was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So there was evening, and there was morning one day. So even he called it, there was evening, and then there was morning. It wasn't there was morning and then evening. It was evening and morning one day. And then we can go on through all of the days of creation when we go through it. So there was evening and there was morning, a second day. There's 13, 19, 23, and 31. So there was evening and there was morning, a sixth day, a fifth day, a fourth day, a third day. So this repeated pattern here, evening and then morning. All right, now the next slide I want to put up here, I'll get sources, because if you just kind of stay in your own grouping of where you get your resources from, you'll notice that your sources back sources, but other people will agree on us as well. I post things from rabbinical sites. This is the Chabad.org. This is the Orthodox Jewish community. And instead of me just explaining it, they explain it, and we agree on the same things. The Jewish day, as it was evening and it was morning one day, Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. So I'm pulling this right from their site as well. It says the Jewish calendar date. When God created time, he first created night and then day. Therefore, a Jewish calendar date begins with the night beforehand, while a day in the secular calendar begins and ends at midnight. A Jewish day goes from nightfall to nightfall. And that was right from their site. They explained it well, so I thought I'd just share it. I'm just going to quote from them. It goes on to saying that the Jewish day defined definition of nightfall. While a day starts and ends at nightfall, the exact moment when night and the next calendar day begins is not clear. The twilight period, here we go, the twilight period from sunset until 3 stars are visible in the sky is a iffy time period. Shabbat and the holidays begin at sunset, the earliest possible definition of nightfall. That's sunset. That's basically the earliest definition of nightfall. It ends with 3 stars appearing in the sky the next evening. That's the latest definition of nightfall. So you're looking at sunset to possible 3 stars in the sky. So you know your day has started in. So why is understanding, so it's basically sunset to sunset. So why is understanding biblical time references important? And this is why the references of what we need to do to understand biblical times. Why is that important? Well, there's one word to answer that question: context. To keep things in context, so we're not sitting on one side of the vehicle burning up, and the other side of the vehicle you're really cold. We got to be in context, on the same page, and working together with this. So I'll look at Nehemiah real quick. So when the gates of Jerusalem began to grow dark before Shabbat. So he's saying this is what Nehemiah. So let me break down this. I want to put this in. I want to put this verse in context too. You have Nehemiah who's looking. He's saying Israel is not doing what God has said that what they need to be doing. They're selling, they're trading, they're working, and everything on Shabbat. We should not be doing this. And he kept telling people, do not do this, do not do this. They were not listening. Trade routes were coming in and out of the gates. So he says, shut the gates on Shabbat. We're shutting down shops on Shabbat. Nothing is going to be sold, traded, or trafficked through the gates during Shabbat. So when did he shut the gates? When did Shabbat start? When it started growing dark before Shabbat. He says, Shabbat starting. Boom, it's starting to get dark. I shut the gates, shut the trade routes down. You do not bring anything in here at nighttime. You do not bring anything here after sundown, because that is Shabbat. I ordered that the doors be shut, and I ordered that they not be reopened until after Shabbat. I put some of my servants in charge of the gates to see that no loads be brought in on Shabbat. This was during the nighttime. So this is the day before, as we would call it the day before. It was sundown. So why would this be? Don't carry your anger into the next day. We've heard that before. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26. Now we're getting into what we call the Brit Hadashah, the New Covenant. It says, be angry, but don't sin. Don't act on that. Don't let the sun go down before you have dealt with the cause of your anger. Do not take your anger into another day. Handle it on that day. And that was before sundown. And when we're talking about sundown and we're talking about Shabbat and we're talking about holidays, there is something that I want to bring up that is a tradition. It's tradition. And it's a really cool tradition. I have some of my friends that we celebrate this tradition every once in a while, and it's a fun one. Y'all heard of Havdalah? Havdalah, okay. Yes. So Havdalah is Hebrew for separation. That means separation. Havdalah, that means separation. It refers to the verbal declaration made at the end of Shabbat or a Jewish holiday in which the holiday or holy day is separated from the mundane period that follows. Since Jewish days begin and end with nightfall, Havdalah may be said only once darkness has fallen on the Saturday night. So what it's saying is, after Shabbat, Saturday night, the sun sets. It is now Sunday. It is going into the next day. It's going into the very first day of the month, or the first day of that week. So it's ending Shabbat, and it's separating its time from saying this is a holy day into just the regular mundane days of the week. That is Havdalah. It's a separation. We're going back. We had our break. We got to have our time. We got to have our worship. We got to have our rest, our peace. And now we're getting back into the regular mundane everyday of life. So it's that separation time, and it's celebrated. The basic Havdalah formula was composed by the men of Great Assembly in the 4th century BCE. And if you're looking at that, you say, wow, that is before the Messiah. Yes, this is a tradition and something that was kept way before the birth of Messiah here on earth. So we're seeing that this is a tradition that is actually in the Brit Hadashah. They would have known this. This is not something new. This is not something that came up a couple hundred years ago. So at the time, the people were very poor and not everyone could afford a cup of wine for Havdalah. So therefore, they instituted a Havdalah prayer, part of the prayers. When the Jews became more financially stable, they formulated the Havdalah prayer over wine. Then the economy continued to fluctuate. It was decided to keep both forms of Havdalah, and this is how things have remained until this day. A Havdalah service. A lot of times you'll see them, we'll smell the spices, and we light 3 braided candles. There's a lot of prayers, blessings, grape juice, wine, breaking of bread. It's a little ceremony of saying that, hey, we're celebrating Shabbat, because it says to honor Shabbat. So I want to give you guys a mindset, some context here. If we're to celebrate Shabbat, a lot of people, I love the way that when I go around to some of my friends in the Jewish community, they'll celebrate Shabbat. On Friday nights, when I'm in a synagogue, there's some songs that we sing, and some of them will turn and will face the door, and we bow and we pray. We bow at the door, and it's welcoming in our guests Shabbat. That's a new kind of way of doing it. I don't say it's not fresh new. It's many hundreds of years old, but it's a way of welcoming Shabbat in as a guest. As if you invite somebody over your house, and you welcome over, you're gonna go to the door and you're gonna welcome in. Come on in the house. Come on in. Kick your feet off. Your shoes off. Kick your feet up. I messed that one all up. That's what happens when you start talking real fast. You just get ahead of yourself. Chase says, he says, man, my brain ain't processing what's coming out here at the same time. But yeah, you take your friends. You say, come on in the house. Take your shoes off. Kick your feet up. Gotta slow it down. But that's what you do. You welcome your guests into your house. But what happens when your friend decides to leave? You walk them to the door. You say goodbye. You walk them to the door. And that is how they view, and that is how I view, and that's how a lot of people view Shabbat. Shabbat is a guest. It's a guest that God gave us, and he's showing up. It's Shabbat. So Friday night we welcome the guest in. We welcome at the door. So everybody faces the door. Come on in, Shabbat. And then at the end of Shabbat, we welcome Shabbat out. We light candles, say blessings. We'll see you later. See you next week. And then we go back to our regular life. So that is a Havdalah service. And that is actually taking place after Shabbat, right after the twilight. Because as soon as twilight happens, you can have a Havdalah service. And this was years before Christ that it was implemented. So it's a tradition. Are all traditions bad? No. You just have to decide on in your household, because I can't decide what's going on in your household. You decide what's going on in your household. If you want something like that, I just say look at traditions and figure out what traditions you want in your house. It's your house. These are the traditions you'll take. Have discernment. Figure out what you want in your house. So in context, Havdalah is a custom today. It was a custom during the time frame of Yeshua, 2,000 years ago. All right? And why is this important? I want to look at why is this important? Because sometimes people will take things out of context. If you don't read it in context, you lose sight of things. And I'll share this with you. Acts chapter 20. I'm using the King JJ version on this one. All right, this old King JJ, what he says here. All right, and upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul preached to them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight. So when is the first day of the week? What day is that? Sunday. This is one of the main verses that support Sunday morning services. This is one that a lot of people, when I sit down with them, they say, this is what it says in the Bible. And they'll go and they'll say that. But if we put that in context, now that you understand days and times, we now understand days and times and how things work. So let's put this verse in that context. And I want you to take note on some things. Let me bring the next slide up. It says on the first day of the week, but it says until midnight. And it says, and there were many lights in the upper room chamber. We're reading the next verse after. There were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together. So number one, until midnight. And number two, there's lots of lights. Some versions will say a lot of oil lamps because it was dark outside. This is Saturday night. This is custom during the time for a Havdalah service. The Apostle Paul, Rabbi Shaul, was visiting with these people, and they stayed through Shabbat, and they were staying around after the twilight period. And there was a little service there. This is a Havdalah service. I am in no way debating Sunday worship or criticizing someone who worships on Sunday. I do not do that, and I won't do that, and I'm not doing that here. I am saying that in context, you can't use this to support Sunday morning worship as replacement of Shabbat. That's what I am saying. You cannot use this verse to say this is a replacement of Shabbat, because some people do that. It's great if you want to worship on Sunday, if you want to worship on Wednesday, if you want to worship on every other Wednesday and maybe a Tuesday on the 4th of the month. That's fine. Worship every day. I'm not dogging anybody for worshiping on a Sunday. What I'm saying is you cannot take a verse out of context to back up something of replacement theology. That you cannot do, which many people do, and I've heard preached before out of context. So Sunday worship is okay. You can worship on Sunday. You can worship Wednesdays. You can worship Mondays. You just can't make this verse support that claim. That's all I'm saying. If you want a good read, there are many out there, but I wanted to share one with you. I came across one, and I thought, hey, this guy did a very good job writing this, all right? I'm going to throw this out here for you. This is the Biblical Research Institute, Saturday night or Sunday morning. He did a very good job with this, is Angel Rodriguez. Now, I will say in mind, this guy is a Seventh-day Adventist. And you go, well, Scott, why are you sharing Seventh-day Adventist? I share rabbinical Jewish. I share Christian things. I share a lot of stuff, okay? I am in no way advocating for the Seventh-day Adventist. I'm just saying that this was a good article. I'll just be honest. The dude did a good job writing this article. He did a really good job at it. It's a page. He did a good job, all right? So he did a good job with it. And why would I share that? Well, I share a bunch from other sources, Christian sources, rabbinical sources, Seventh-day Adventist sources. I will share things. I'll even share secular sources if it's on context with what's going on. Just because I don't see eye to eye or agree with everything that they're teaching and believing doesn't mean that they don't get it right sometimes. All right? Sometimes you might find common ground with other people. And if you only hung out with people that believed 100% the way that you believed, you'll find out that you will be very alone. So just check it out if you want to. It's a good article. I just wanted to just post that up there. I didn't want to go through the whole article. But now I have the basics on how to follow biblical calendar and tell time. So now I can actually see what this calendar looks like. We can apply this. We're going to go through this. Yeah. So we're looking at Leviticus chapter 23. All right. This chapter will give you a list of all the designated times, holy days, holidays, however you want to do it. The Moedims, whatever you want to pronounce it as. The homework, oh yeah, I said it. Homework will be to read this chapter of Leviticus 23. So I want everybody to read this chapter of Leviticus 23. Make a list of names of the days that are listed. So there's going to be days that are listed, and they give them names, and they talk about the holidays. List those down. And while you're reading and writing them down, I want you to make aware of something first. There's some things I want you to be aware of. It says, Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel the designated times of Adonai which you are to proclaim as holy convocations, that is a time frame where everybody gets together, are my designated times. What I want you to pay attention to on this, it says the times of who? Adonai, God. Because whose designated times are they? Yes. Adonai's, they're God's times. These are God's times. Let's just be front. These are not Jewish days. They're not Jewish holidays. They are God's days. Just so happens that the Jewish people are the only ones that were proclaiming God's days. That's why they're referred to as Jewish holidays or Jewish holy days in context, because they were the only ones doing it. So we will begin studying these days. So if you do your homework and read this chapter, chapter 23. Now with that, if anybody forgets, who was the greatest basketball player of all time? Now, I know that's debatable, but let's just be real. It's not debatable. It is not debatable. But some people like to debate this. I can't fix ignorance. But you would say is Jordan. You go MJ, Michael Jordan all day. What number was he? 23. Now you ain't gonna forget Leviticus 23. You go, well, what chapter was that? It was Leviticus 23. It's Michael Jordan's number, 23. There we go. So now you're never gonna forget it. I tell that people, they go, oh yeah, it was 23 something. They might through about 5 books to find it, but they know it was chapter 23. All right. So why do we celebrate? And I'm going to wrap this up. This actually coming to the end of this. Why do we celebrate the holy days of God? Like I said, this is a prerequisite. It was really not too in depth with what was going on. I wanted to break down this because so many people come to me and ask these same questions over and over and over again. And I go, okay, I keep having to explain it. I thought, well, it'd be great just to get it all done, put it out there for people to go to and to review this before we get into high holy days. Why do we celebrate the holy days of God? All right, I did this as a joke one time and it actually stuck and everybody enjoyed it. All right, so I'm gonna put this back up here. What would Jesus do? The bracelets. I had one back in the 90s. What would Jesus do? And then it said, somebody came to me and said, well, not what would he do, but what did Jesus do? And I was like, oh, that's an even bigger question. Well, what did he do? What did he do? And I took it a step further. So what I really think what people are actually saying when they're doing discipleship training in churches and places like that, this is what's really that they're asking. WWJDALAINJ. And on that it says, what would Jesus do as long as it ain't Jewish? That's what I would do. I would do whatever he does as long as it ain't Jewish, because I don't want to be looked at as like maybe some Jewish guy. That's my sarcasm. That's my boldness and frontness. The crazy thing is I actually had a bracelet made that actually has that. And I actually showed it to some people and they were like, wow. And they started laughing. And some of these guys are some really good church-going guys of mine. And they go, honestly, that's true. That is actually true. And I was like, isn't it though? And he was like, never even thought of it like that. I was like, yeah, you would do anything he would do as long as it ain't Jewish. I don't be caught doing any of that stuff. But they laughed about it. And it was, you have to have a really good way of presenting that. You can't present that evil-hearted. You just have to be sarcastic about it, and they have to see that as going, okay, I get it. But if you want to ask me, Scott, which people do ask me, they'll say, why do you celebrate these feasts? Why do you celebrate God's feasts? And I'll give you Scott's answer, because a lot of people want to know my answer to that. And this is my answer. If these days are important enough for God, and they're important enough for Yeshua, Jesus, then they are important enough for me. That is my quick and simple answer. I'm going to close with this. This is Psalm 81. We just got through reading. Sing for joy to God, our strength. Shout to the God of Yaakov. Why Yaakov? Because any other nation, it could be the God of Abraham. Any other nation could be God of Isaac. But the God of Israel, the God of Jacob, of Yaakov. So start the music and beat the drum. We're entering into some high holy days. We're going to be entering into these. These are some celebration times. Now keep in mind when we're going through these lessons, some of these are celebration services. We have celebrations, we have joys. Some of these are not. So I would say proclaiming these days, celebrating would be used lightly, because some of them we celebrate, some we do not actually celebrate, some of them are sad days. But in the messianic world of things, these sad days end with praise. I will say that. They end with praise. So we do celebrate each one of these. And I want to put it just lightly, because some days we're celebrating, but it has a harsh meaning behind it. but it ends with celebration, victory. So with that, we will start the music. We will beat the drum, play the sweet lyre and the flute, sound the shofar at Rosh HaKodesh. That's the first of the month, the new moon, and at the full moon for the Pilgrim Feast. These are your Passovers. These are your Sukkots. So with that, we are going to get ready for these feasts. So stay tuned for any of the other lessons that we're going to have out on the feast days and festivals and how they're played out, what they mean, because they are a season for a reason. Amen. We'll go ahead and we'll stand for our prayers and blessings, and I'll close this out in prayer. We'll sing a song, and we'll close this out with a blessing. God, we want to thank you very much for this day, this holy Shabbat. It's been a rough week. We know that you are in control of everything going on. No matter all the craziness that goes on, your name will still be proclaimed, and to you be all the glory through that. We want to be good stewards of your time and stewards of everything that you're giving to us in an assignment. It's hard to do it by yourself, but it's a little easier when you give us a group of people that come together for you and worship you together, and it's the family. So I want to say thank you for this family. Thank you for this group. We're looking forward to these festival days, celebration days that we just want to honor you. These are your days. They're important to you and they're important to us. Thank you for Yeshua, and we will see that in all these feast days too. Thank you for revealing that to us. And it's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. We'll go ahead and let's sing that song. Sing a song and then we'll do the blessings. I think it's page 8. We'll close with a Nehemar. I'll say in English first. And it is said, the Lord shall be king over all the world, and on that day the Lord will be one, and his name one. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai Lamelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihei Adonai echad ushemo echad. Close to the blessings. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine on you and show you his favor. May Adonai look upon you and give you peace. Yevarech Adonai ve'ishmerecha. Yor Adonai pano v'lecha ve'hunecha. Isa Adonai pano v'lecha ve'asim lecha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, guys.